Good morning once again, everybody. We are going to talk about CYA strategies. At least two of them, because it's kind of fundamental. You know these. Most of you already do. But there's that fine old saying that it is better to remain silent and be thought a fool than to speak and remove all doubt. Now, honestly, I won't lie to you, for a lot of my working life, that's exactly what I did. I kept my mouth shut. All right. Because honestly, you sit back and you look at how fucked up the people who are generally in charge, how they can take a perfect situation and fuck it up royally. And you just sit there like, yep, congratulations. You literally fucked up everything for everybody who works here. Good job, bud. Yeah. But that is just a thing. Honestly, when it comes to especially corporate employers, it is better to just keep your mouth shut. All right. Now, given a lot of places, very much so, people are naturally curious, and whether it's coworkers that work next to you every day, or whether it's management, they do want to know about you. They want to know what makes you tick. They want to know how they can leverage you. Okay? Give me just a second here. Running on a severe coffee deficit. Anyway, it makes it kind of difficult to exist just based on the fact that the more info that you let out over time, the more of a general file is kind of built on you. Now, of course, it's not necessarily going to be a physical paper file, but as people build up enough details, all of a sudden they get an idea of who you are, what you're capable of, all this other shit, you know, and they will figure out your weak spots and they will use that to their advantage. They will use it to try to get you to work more overtime. They will use it to get you going above and beyond. Like, everybody knows the basic example of, you go to work for a company and you work a little too hard, especially when you're younger. You work hard. All right. There's a different term I'd rather use here, but we're going to stay relatively polite with it. You work way too hard for way too little. And then next thing you know, you're working that hard and harder for the same little. And they just poke and prod. And as you give them more, their expectations for you rise. All right. And then with the leverage, they will try to maximize total value out of you. It is a very smart idea to, whether you are brilliant or whether you are totally tarded, all right, it is a smart idea to, for the most part, keep your mouth shut. All right. But in addition to this comes another part. So, to the extent, this also applies to people like Alex Jones. Okay. Alex Jones, now, given, as most of you have seen, I'm sure, or heard about, more and more of what Jonesy would go out into the world and say has proven to be relatively accurate, which for a lot of people is a bit scary, and it's understandable. Um, Definitely fucking adds to the pressure of people all of a sudden finding Christianity again. It's just like, yep, yep, yep. Anyway, the only reason, so when you are in the position where you've already opened your mouth and said things that you shouldn't have. Now, this applies to, any job, anything in life. it really helps to if you can be labeled on the outside as something like conspiracy theorist, which in Jonesy's case kept his ass alive. All right. This is the thing. Honestly, personally, I've been wondering more and more now that more and more people are they're equating conspiracy theorists to spoiler alerts. Okay. Conspiracy theorist as a term was created by the three-letter agencies to just quickly and easily discredit people. All right. And this gave people like Jones, and I mean, given it also gave, oh shit, not Bill Hicks. Oh, hold on. Give me just a second. Behold a pale horse. Give me 1 second. Damn it. Behold a pale William Cooper, Bill Coop, gave Jonesy and Bill Cooper an incredible shield. All right, although in Cooper's case it wasn't exactly that good of a shield, but in Jonesy's case he did really good, really good. He was able to spit out incredible amounts of information that people weren't supposed to know, but the fact that he was labeled conspiracy theorist and the fact that everybody rolled with that, okay, it protected him. It absolutely protected him because everybody naturally is just like, he's a conspiracy theorist, he's full of shit, he's a kook, he's a crackpot. You know, the shit that comes out of his mouth, just write it off entirely. It's fucking useless to you. And, convenient, isn't it? I honestly worry about Jonesy's health going forward because the label conspiracy theorist isn't exactly working like it used to, but at the same time, we also live in a time where evidently nobody gives a fuck about anything anymore. So it's just like, well, shit. Fuck it. But because it falls under covering your ass, yeah, I figured I'd mention it. These are important things to keep in mind. If you can be labeled a kook or crazy or a conspiracy theorist, doesn't matter, whatever the context is, that is very helpful. That is very helpful. All right, more than a lot of people might understand. Although, unfortunately, it puts you in the position, in Jonesy's case particularly, where essentially he's the seeing Cassandra. You know, I forget exactly how the story goes, but the curse is that, you know, you see everything that's going to happen, but nobody you tell believes you. And it's just like, yep. It is more important now than ever to practice CYA strategies in the corporate setting and business in general. You want to cover your ass everywhere and way you can possible. In the corporate setting, of course, and this has been a thing ever since Me Too took off, where if you have to have a meeting with a female, all right, could be a coworker looking for help with something, could be you're a manager and you have to deal with a female employee, you always have witnesses. All right, this is a fucking huge one. You always have to have witnesses. And ideally, you want to have more witnesses on your side than she has on her side or they have on their side. Okay? It's a thing. Corporate politics, too, it's all a fucking mess. It's all a fucking mess. All right? I'm not going to lie to you. For the most part, a lot of these jobs aren't even worth fucking doing anymore. All right, just because the risk is so high. Like, could you imagine being a male engineer, all right, who wasn't, a soy cuck lefty type. Could you imagine being a male engineer working at Twitter before Musk bought it? Could you imagine how fucking repressed and quieted you'd have to be in order to survive there? All right, like there's it's one thing being drained by a job to the point where you're just apathetic and you don't care anymore. It's another thing when you are so suppressed that it begins to transform into rage because you have to keep all of the shit bottled up because you're sitting there like, good God, you people are retarded. Would you please just shut the fuck up? Becky, do I need to hear you talk about politics every single goddamn day I come into the office? Dude, is that necessary? Really? Of course, again, another strategy. Everything in writing. All right, everything in writing. When it comes to your dealing with an organization as a worker, you want to have everything in writing. All right. This was one thing. I worked for a company many years ago where they promised raises and those raises never came. All right. It was also tied in the fact that the company started lowering the starting wages in addition to the fact that they were fucking everybody on the raises that were promised. When time came around for those raises to go out, people would, check their pay stubs and their paperwork, and it's just like, where's that raise? And they were met with responses from human resources of, do you have that in writing, sir? Which obviously pissed off a lot of people and led to a massive increase in turnover and general worker lethargy, where everybody's just like, fuck this place. I don't care anymore. I'm not working hard. Eat a dick. Hmm. Also, once again, this is product of personal opinion and does not represent Spades Consulting LLC, any of its members, employees. You know the deal. That kind of shit. When it comes to dealing with corporations, you want everything you can possibly get in writing. Do not trust a single thing they tell you. Do not trust a single thing they tell you. And ideally, so if you, let's say for instance, you got roped into either you were directly connected or you were just like accessorially connected to an HR incident, all right? You want to have everything possible done through email, all right? You want emails, you want notes, correspondence, you want the captions, subtitles, you want everything, all right? And you want that shit on email, all right? You do everything you can to force discussions to happen through email where possible, all right? Because if you have it on an email, obviously you have a copy, you have a record of the conversation happening. All right. This is important if a company tries to burn you. If you have a laundry list of all the correspondence that you've saved over the years, all right, and then they try to burn you and they try to act as if they didn't have whatever talks or whatever the hell it could be. It could literally be anything. I'm honestly struggling for examples, but ideally, you want to have as much paperwork, as many emails, as many proven exchanges on file, and save that shit. Give me 1 second. Okay, my apologies. You want to have as much of that shit on record as humanly fucking possible, because if the company does ever try to screw you over, as long as you've got records and documentation, you can reasonably cover your ass. All right. And then even if they purge you, fire you, do whatever, you can use it against them in court should it come to that. Okay. And don't write that off as being a thing, because I can assure you, with how many companies in the past that I've worked for, just, general labor, anything, the amount of companies that I've worked for that have engaged in crooked behavior, all right, crooked behavior, unsafe behavior, all sorts of just problematic, dumb shit where you would expect, yeah, like you would naturally expect that a company that has existed for 80 plus years would have their shit together, but then they hire the popular girl fresh out of high school or fresh out of college, and she, not knowing anything about employment law, general labor laws, general law as it stands, all right, general law as it stands of what you can and cannot do in a salaried position as a company, they hire the popular ditzy blonde to take over the organization, and unsurprisingly, all right, shit goes off the rails. All right, just like the prime examples, although given there are quite a few green text stories that are legit, just stories, fairy tales, but some of those are legitimate, where companies hired on women who would tell them, okay, well, what we really need is we need a more female centric atmosphere. And then they end up sinking the startup or sinking the entire company organization. And then it turns into a multi-million-dollar fucking dig it out of the grave campaign to try to save the fucking brand, because you entrusted essentially a 16-year-old girl with a Ferrari. All right, the amount of dumb shit that you see, if you just sit there and look, the amount of dumb shit that you see and the reoccurring nature of it, you're just sitting there like, why exactly is it um, so many fucking brain dead tards get into high salaried positions? Meanwhile, their engineering, their science, like people who actually have to do real shit in the real world that has real consequences, those people rarely, if ever, get to those high positions. It's just like you look at the government, not focusing on the part of shit that they're getting up to. We're we're not going to touch on that. But you look at the government, how many engineers do you have working in the government? How many, like all these politicians, they're all fucking lawyers. All right. They sit there and they you know they twiddle things. They fuck around. That's pretty much it. They screw around. They're lawyers. They don't actually have to design buildings. They don't have to come up with a deaf system that isn't a complete piece of shit. All right. They legislate that cars need to become increasingly more efficient. So now you have, I mean, eventually we're going to get to the point where you have, and I know some of this is getting rolled back, but you're going to get to the point where you have a quad turbocharged 2-cylinder fucking weed whacker engine powering a tank sized SUV down the fucking highway. And it's got 16 catalytic converters because, God forbid, a little bit of fucking nitrous leak out into the atmosphere. Oh, God, I forget which chemical combinations come out of a tailpipe. Nitric oxide. I forget, honestly. It's been a while. It's late. Anyway. God, I've forgotten the topic entirely now. Regardless, covering your ass. You do the best you can, especially if you're in a decent paying position. All right. Do the absolute best you can to cover your ass if you're about to get into a higher paying position. Especially learn all the strategies to cover your ass now before you're actually in there. Okay. Because, especially in the corporate world, these people are fucking cutthroat. All right. Now, I don't mean just as a whole, I mean competition wise. All right. Same thing applies to kings. All right. Whoever is in charge, all right, is constantly battling the fact that the people around them all would rather be in charge and be, the center of the great feast in the hall. Everybody wants to hold the top spot. Not too many people can honestly handle the power of being at the top. There's not a whole lot of people who can actually honestly handle the responsibility that comes with being quote unquote number one. All right. Uh, People see the glitz and the glamour. They don't see the reality of it. It's effectively meta logistics. All right, when you really strip it down to base reality, it's meta logistics, making sure things get to where they need to go and keeping the overall situation under control. It's general management, legit general management. But people look past that. They see the glitz, the glamour, they see the cash, the Ferraris, modern day. They see all that. They don't see the struggles of trying to keep even a basic organization together and moving in the right direction. It's not easy. It is not easy. Um, especially now. Especially now, because there's no solid ground to anything anymore. Everything is a floating cloud of, it's a miasma of bullshit. Things will go one way, look like they're going one way, and then magically, somehow everything gets flipped upside down. Like this is the nature of the world we live in now. Regardless, cover your ass, take care of yourselves, try to have a good one. If you're interested in personal or business consulting, stop by www.spadesconsulting.com without the dash. If you're interested in written content, stop by the Substack, linked in the description below and on the nav for the website. If you appreciate the video, if you like the video, like, favorite, share, subscribe, hype, leave a comment, do all the things, tickle the bell, diddle the bell, spank the bell, do whatever you want to the bell, and I will see you next time.